Good afternoon, colleagues and friends. I'm glad to be here to give a presentation for G20 Interfaith Summit. And I think our panel theme is about spiritual capital and economic development in China. My presentation would touch about how what Professor Wang just said, the religious revivalism in the last 30 years in China, especially the Confucian revivalism, has contributed to the economic development and social harmony in China, whether it is the case or not. And based on some analysis of Confucian discourse and the role they played in economic development in East Asia, including China, I want to speculate whether in the future that Confucianism or any other religion in China could offer a platform or foundation for the construction of what we call public space for religion. So as we may know, China is traditional China or imperial China is a Confucian state or Confucian empire, which means Confucian was not only a state ideology or political culture of the country, but also as a way of life for millions of population inside China. And of course, there's other religions, especially Taoism and Buddhism, and a small number of Christians and Muslims and even smaller members of folk religions. So I think yesterday, if you attend Professor Wei's presentation, he gave a very good overview of contemporary Chinese religious statistics. But traditionally, I think we can assume the same. There's a diversity of religious teachers. But Confucianism, why, if you talk about the imperial China, is Confucian immediately come to mind because Confucian is a state ideology. If you want to get into the court politics, you have to study Confucian classics, canons, and take exam, then become official. So in this reason, I first start with Confucianism and focus on the Confucianism revival. And when we talk about the Confucian revival, what we are reviving? So we have to go back a little bit, very briefly. What is the core values of Confucian, supposed to be there? So when you're reviving, are you reviving the Confucian values or something else? So if we go back to see the traditional values, then we can make a judgment about contemporary revival, like if it's true revival or if it's revival in the values or some new development. Now, I think I don't have to repeat much about what is the Confucian values because it's an academic platform. We are not here to preach you. But the core things about Confucian values, first about human relationship and cardinal virtues, right? Like in Chinese we call it Wulong, Longli. So basically, how do you handle your relationship with people, between 5 relations between minister and ruler, between husband and wife, between son and father, between brother and younger brother and elder brother, and between friends. So based on these 5 pair of relationships, you developed 5 cardinal virtues. So we have a humanity or benevolence, justice, rituals, trust, and wisdom. So these are how you use these virtues to handle your relationship. And one thing in terms of Confucian moral ideologies is more emphasized on self-cultivation, which maybe you heard in many presentations in the last 2 days, because it's an interfaith dialogue. Faith. It's a little bit different from the faith-based or faith-driven morality or ethics. So, because if you have a notion of a heaven and hell and ever-existing God, so the argument you might make is, okay, if you do good, the God will reward you. If you do bad, you'll be punished. And there's heaven and hell there. But in Confucianism, this idea is not very clear. So there's talking about heaven, about Confucian idea of heaven or God, but it's not main theme in Confucianism. That's why many scholars characterize Confucianism as a humanistic religion or ethical religion, whatever that means. The point is like self-cultivation. You rely on yourself to cultivate your morality. And of course, after you finish yourself, you expand your morality to your community, to the world, to the people, right? So there's a concentric circles. You expand your goodwill or good act to the communities. And regarding to the Confucian's view of to the other religions or to other teachings, so it's often to mention, even in the Chinese diplomatic papers, they say, okay, Chinese civilization or Confucian civilization, we focus on 和而不同, means harmony without uniformity, right? It is true. It is one of the Confucian values. I'll give example about how Confucian deal with other teachings. In China, we frequently talk about three teachings into one, or 三教合一. So this idea is basically there's harmonious relationship between Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. To the even extreme, according to some recent studies, at least some late Qing or Ming dynasties intellectuals, they can like eclectically or flexibly move around these three religions or three teachings. For example, when they are official in the court, and they are of Confucian, so they use Confucian values and rules to rule the country. But if they are at home, they might be a Taoist. So they adopt Taoist tactics or Taoist method to keep the bodily health or longevity. So Taoist has many like art or many tactics for the bodily health. And when you think about afterlife, when you die, when you are going to die, when you think about like life after you die, so it seems Buddhism provide more answers to traditional Chinese intellectuals. So it's ironically, you see a person can be a Confucian, Taoist, and Buddhist in the same time in his life. And it's even this kind of eclectic understanding of teachings or religion even influenced people like Christians and Muslims. So like in 16th century, we have a group of Jesuits from Portuguese. And when they went to China, they called themselves Western Confucian. They wear Confucian dress, and they reading the Confucian classics. And they said, we are the real Confucian. We are restoring the authentic premier Confucians who worshipped God, who has real teachings of monotheism. And Muslims in Ming and Qing dynasty, they adopt Confucian classics, call themselves Hui Confucians, Huizhu, like Muslim Confucian. So basically, they're using Confucian, especially newer Confucian terms and philosophies to explain Islamic teachings to the Chinese Muslims. And there's a lot of work done by Syed Hussein Nasr and many scholars in the United States about how Muslim Confucian contribute to both sides, to Islam and to Confucianism itself. So then I'll just jump to the Confucian politics, because Confucian politics more rely on the virtue and ritual and meritocracy. Whoever who has virtue and merits rules, like unlike the democracy or the contested politics we are very familiar today. And so because of this, this gave us background about what Confucian's teachings and development in the history. Today, there's since 1980s or early 70s to today, there's discussion about Confucian revivalism. In fact, it's first done outside of China, not in China, like Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan. People began to attribute economic development or success in those countries to Confucian values, right? For example, in Japan, people say, because Confucian emphasized the state power and people's welfare. That's why Japan's economy boomed because the Confucian, the state capitalism, like state play an important role in maintaining the economic development. It's not like a free market economy. And another argument made in Japan is, in Japan you find very interesting things like Gini index is very small. Income disparity or inequality is not as large as other developed countries. One reason for that, that's like because of seniority ranking system developed from traditional Confucian values. Like a CEO maybe earn a little more than salary than his employee, but he still feel very motivated and contributing to the success of the company. Why is that? Because his status is not achieved through whether he earns how much money or more money, but it's achieved through the seniority, the respect, the rituals he got from his employees, the polite manners he received. That's why he fulfilled his satisfaction, spiritual, not through the monetary things. And of course, in Singapore, in Taiwan, we heard the similar things. And especially in Singapore in 1980s, Lee Kuan Yew talked about Asian values, how Asian values contribute to the not only economic development, but also sustainable development. So economic development with equal or near equally redistribution among the populace. And but the mostly one negative case is in China, mainland China, like because of Cultural Revolution and religious reform, and China's kind of a religion and tradition was kind of diminished, destroyed, suppressed to a very large extent. Still, some recent study shows that like in some rural areas where the traditional values still was kept, traditional Buddhist values, traditional Confucian values, especially related to the clans, family temples. These values contribute to the accountability and transparency of local governance. So one professor from MIT, Cai Li Cai, he did a research about this how traditional social groups, clans, temples, even churches contribute to the moral accountability in rural China. See, China does not have a very contested democratic politics. So in rural China, if the state does not offer the robust monetary or anti-corruption measures, it's very easy for the local village directors or cadres to get corrupted because there's nobody like checking and balancing him. But in some areas where this traditional values still exist, they checked this kind of corruption or bad political practice through the temples or clans or families, because inside there's a ranks, there's a moral, like we call it moral check, moral balance there. So this is a Li Cai's study. And I'm just going to skip this very quickly. How many minutes? Okay. So there's a debate about like whether we should restore traditional values. Example would be like Confucianism, right? Like as you remember, 2 years ago, the Confucian statue was placed in the Tiananmen Square for a month, and then it was removed again. So this is reflects the Chinese uncertainty or debate about whether we should revive the Confucianism. And I think similar logic applied to other teachings too. Whether you allow the traditional Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, or the new religion to play a larger role to reconstruct the Chinese morality and national identity. Well, I'm saying this because even our president, since Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, and Xi Jinping all resort to the traditional terms, at least, to justify their rule. Like Jiang Zemin talked about rule of virtue, 德治, and rule of virtue and rule of law goes together. That's his framing. And President Hu Jintao talk about harmonious society and a harmonious world. These are all derived from Confucian values. And recently, President Xi Jinping made an important speech at the anniversary of 2,600 some years of Confucian's anniversary. So they all kind of signaling that we want to revive the tradition. And there's a debate about whether it is going to work or not. So because Chinese traditional or religious revival happening in the market economy, opening up and policy since 1978. Is this a genuine revival of a tradition, or is just a byproduct of capitalist consumption? So this is an important thing, because when people get materially well off, they maybe seek for spiritual well off. So now this is okay, traditional values or traditional cultural products become the consumer, new kind of consumerism. So so this question we can discuss during the Q&A. Another, I think many our colleagues and even including Professor Zheng already mentioned between the state and the religion relationship. So when you are reviving Confucian or any other traditions, so what's the role of a state in this revivalism? So that's a few things to. And the last point I want to make is some scholars already borrowed from the traditional Chinese model of three teachings into one, or like San Jiao He Yi, three teachings, the harmonious relationship between three Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism as a model to reconstruct the religious public space for today's China. Today, China will have 5 official recognized religions. So this is, okay, Confucian can offer a model. Under Confucian model, everybody can have a dialogue, have an interface, can play a role. Is it like a tangible proposal or not? So here I offer a few challenges to this proposal. First of all is like, why Confucianism, right? So we have China has a constitution and China has a Marxist-Leninism ideology. So why the religious revival or religious cannot coexist within this state regime? Like whether in terms of our constitution or in terms of Marxist-Leninism and Maoist ideology. Why this is the case? So the Confucian revivalist does not make a good case why the Marxist or constitution is not working. And another thing is like, how about other religions, like smaller religions, folk religions, sects, which does not include in these 5 big fives. So what do you do with them? So these are some challenges I'm making to whether it's tangible to offer Confucianism or traditional as a platform to reconstruct Chinese religious public sphere. And so I think that's all I have to say today. Thank you very much.